right, I'm gonna try the stream here.
For sure.
And we're live.
Nice. Let me open that up.
And we're live.
Nice. Let me. Is my mic too high or is it good?
That sounds good.
Open that up.
And we're live. So just so you know, there's gonna be it's like a good second delay.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like I'm viewing the past. Oh, you posting up in Discord?
Yeah.
Where Alex and Octavia are. What is your internet speed? You have fiber, I'm guessing.
It's coaxial. But it's 1 gig down and like I think it's 50 up.
It's funny because they tell me mine's 1 gig down, but it's not.
Yeah. Mine is definitely 1 gig down. But it's still like the worst internet I've had. Which is
Really?
kind of crazy to say that.
Yeah, I feel like cable's always like that though.
Yeah. Like I had well, at least worse internet I've had for a long time. Yeah, because in Florida we had FiOS.
Yep. Yeah.
And then in Northern Virginia we had FiOS. So
Yeah, I had FiOS when I was in Maryland before I moved down here, so I was spoiled as well.
yeah.
Granted, at that time they only had like 500 down, I think, and it was still, faster and better than what I had here. And then right when I was leaving, like no joke, it was like a week and a half before I was leaving, they were like, "We have gig now," and I was like, "Oh, thanks, that's great." But
I'm surprised places like Seattle and like San Francisco stuff don't do like their own internet.
Yeah, right.
It's like, why didn't Microsoft just make their own internet here and just give it to everybody, and then that way everybody would be online and they could just get more people that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Starlink, man. Gotta
Yeah.
get Starlink eventually.
It's all made in Seattle.
Yep, yep. Looking for my Discord window.
So for those watching the stream, we're just waiting on a few people, and then we'll get started.
So think about all your questions that you want to ask. Phone on silent.
Everyone.
Hey.
So are we streaming this live, or what's the plan?
Yeah, so we're on live right now.
Like right now?
Yeah.
Good to know. Hello everyone. Okay.
Um, yeah, while we're waiting, I guess we'll go over just kind of like what we're going to talk about. We've been trying to do these webinars. Well, we're going to start doing webinars so that way we can kind of interact with you, with the community more, and hopefully answer some questions and get some training and all of that. Today, we're going to go over the changes in version 1.5. As we've seen in the Discord, it seems like a lot of people have swapped over and are using it. So I'm sure there's more than enough questions.
Hello.
Hey.
We're
Are we
live.
live?
Yep.
What? Are we live? Sorry, I missed
Yes.
that.
Yes, we are.
Just tweet out that we are live.
I'm going to try out the new version while watching this one. Not sure when. If there's any questions that you guys have on your mind right now, if you guys post them in the chat and everything, we can try to hit them as we're going through. So if there's anything in particular.
Yeah, and Sam, I'm monitoring both the YouTube chat and the
Okay.
Discord chat.
Sweet. Because I don't know. When do you want to get started or?
Yeah, let's get started.
Okay. I don't know. I need to shut this video because the delay is breaking my mind. Is there a way to just view the chat and not see the video? Yeah.
Scroll
you
down.
You can pop up.
Oh, just pause it. Yeah, I'll just pause it.
No, so
Sure.
if you go over to the side, there's like a three
Oh,
little dots. If you click
yeah.
on that, then you can pop out chat.
Sweet. Cool. Okay. Let me pull up this outline. Things we're gonna go. Problem with too many screens. Okay. Who's control of the screens? You do, right, Chris?
What's up?
You have control over the screens?
Yep.
For number one on the list, I think we were just going to look at the change of why, like how chains moved in general from.
Oh, do you need access?
Hey.
Yeah, let me look.
So, all right, why don't you start us out with an overview of what we're going to be covering today so we can kind of give an outline and people can check in and check out from there.
Yeah, so strictly it's a changes between 1.4 and 1.5. Pretty much mostly user interface stuff that that people see that's different. So like just even the general layout from the very beginning, how you don't have the place where you can just launch a chain from right there. You kind of have to click on the agents and everything. Then we're going to go over some like of the editor changes because I know a lot of people were wondering about the editor plugin getting pulled out from where it was. And then we'll go over payloads and just kind of how like some of the questions regarding how you can upload payloads via the API and how you can kind of figure out where they're getting pulled from, like if they're going to be pulled from the local workspace or if they're going to get pulled through Outpost. Then we'll go over some API stuff in general, just kind of like how the advanced curl commands that you're going to see inside the UI now, when you want to launch stuff, it'll show you like what the command is you can run. Then we'll go over the ranges and redirectors and how like redirectors kind of became ranges, or ranges became redirectors. That's how it is. Yeah. And then we'll go over connect and all of the crazy stuff that is changed with connect, followed by the sweet art and sliver plugins. And then from that at the end, we'll just kind of wrap up with some tips and advice for like things that even we've ran into when we're using it, and just hopefully that'll be that. And of course a Q&A session during that time, so if there's any other questions. Good.
Sounds good. Let's dive in.
Sweet.
Sam, you should be able to share.
Yeah, let me pull. How's that? Good?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. For the chains in general, anybody want to handle that one at first, or if not, I'll just talk about
Take
it.
charge. Lead us.
Okay.
Fearless leader.
So 1.4, when you first opened up your operator, you used to be able to launch your chains from right here. As you can see, that is no longer an option. It has been, sorry, let me move my Zoom call out of the way. It has been moved to underneath what I call a context menu, because this will kind of change depending on what agent you've clicked on. But I mean, you'll always have this place over here where you can find the chains to deploy. The other thing is, a lot of people I think had asked about like the TTPs and stuff. This cool little small wording over on the side. So you not only just can you find your chains over here, but you can also find your TTPs over here now as well. Let's see, we'll go over. Trying to think of a TTP to pull up. Do one of the ones I was using recently. We'll do that just for now. So like if I'm pulling up just an individual TTP now, this might cause some confusion, but in essence, when you see this like single TTP here, and I think I showed it. I showed it when I was doing it. Yeah, you can see like the TTP on the side. When you see this, this is just an individual TTP. The chains will have multiple TTPs in here. It is possible to have a chain with one TTP in it as well. So that, just in case anybody's wondering.
And if you make changes to that, then you also see a modified. So you'll see two of them, and you'll have one just as a modified bracket on the side.
Yep. So like pulling up a chain over here, we'll just go ahead and pull up the file hunter stuff. All right. You can see here, the other thing that was done was that you can now like change the ordering of the TTPs inside the chains, which should, I believe it overwrites the planner. Is that right, Alex? It does overwrite the
so locked versus unlocked. When you press locked, what it's going to do is run those in the atomic ordering that you've provided. So when you, for example, pull up File Hunter, which you've combined File Hunter here. If you click on Unlocked now it's locked. You can drag the ordering. So just drag that down. So now what that's saying is I will run this in the order presented on this list, and it'll let you do atomic ordering of your chains. And then if you unlock it, that's saying use the planner to do the automatic fact rendering into future TTPs.
Any questions on that? No. Let's see.
Remember, it takes just a like.
Yeah. We'll give it a few seconds just to see if anybody. I don't see. You said you're monitoring Discord, because if there is in Discord, okay. I have YouTube, the one, but I don't trust my Discord. My notifications are always jacked up on it. But yeah, so I guess we'll continue moving on. The next thing we were like, now that we see the chains and the TTP. Oh, we do.
Fixing ATR for atomic testing. Is that coming this week?
Yes. So there's two components to that fix. One is a fix that needs to come out in Operator 153, which is slated for release this week. And then the other is a fix to the Atomic plugin itself, which if you check on our community repository, there's an open pull request that has the code that I have patched so that everything will function properly in 153. And I'll post that link just so you can take a look at it if you're interested. But feel free to continue on, Bart.
Yeah, there's some people typing in Discord. I was just wondering.
Yep, we'll monitor that. You
okay.
can keep pressing with the stuff.
So next up is the editor changes, which I think Octavia was going to touch on. Kind of how, I don't know if you want to speak and swap between screens, if you want to share yours instead of me having to click stuff. But
yep.
Or
let me bring that up now. Okay, can you see my operator?
Yep.
Perfect. So hello, everyone. Lots of new changes with how we create and build TTPs. So let's take a look. Kind of first thing we're going to notice, in order to access the editor, we no longer have it on the sidebar here. Instead, it's a drill down based on interacting with an agent. So click on Launch Chain. In the view that's used to navigate the available chains and TTPs, we can click on one of these, the one we want to edit. Let's, whatever, just pick one. Create a malicious link file. And here, where Bart was just showing the ordering of the TTPs within the chain, we can actually click on this TTP to bring up the editor here. And kind of the biggest change we're going from with 1.4 is the introduction of a text editor for the TTP. So this is the YAML file as you would have found it in GitHub previously. Each of these fields kind of denoting, some property of the TTP, such as whatever file name or the description or tactic and technique on the MITRE ATT&CK matrix, along with metadata for the TTP. So the author, the chain in which the TTP belongs. There might be more than one. Some TTPs, they're in like 5 or 6 chains or whatever. The tag field should be familiar from 1.4. This just lets us tag a TTP with some type of unique identifier. Maybe if you're using a TTP or a chain for a certain range or a certain type of testing, you can add your tag there. Along with real estate, the source, whether it's a community, professional, TTP or whatever. So previously, and this is also a big change, previously we had in 1.4 a navigator for the different platforms and executors, and you could point and click, whether you're working on Windows or Darwin, PowerShell, whatever. Now this is just part of the YAML hierarchy here. So you define your platforms up front, like Windows, Darwin. The executors are subkeys, and then commands and variants, if you have any, follow this basic pattern. So that's kind of like an overview of what the properties are in a TTP. Now this view is actually a valid YAML editor, so we can go and make changes. And if the changes we make are not valid, we'll see up here at the top that this is an invalid YAML file. So as you're building stuff, you can actually check and make sure that what you have created is syntactically valid. It's not going to throw an error when you try and run it. And if there is an error, this won't even save. So you actually can't even accidentally bork your TTPs. Similarly, you can Control Z to undo any changes. So if you make a mistake, just roll it back quickly. Yeah, so let's actually just go and create a new chain. So create new TTP. When we do this, we're actually given a kind of template for filling out, whatever it is we're doing. This ID, we don't need to change it. These are automatically, uniquely generated each time we create a TTP. So if we delete this, go and build a new one, we'll see that we have a new UUID. And the rest of the information you just fill out as necessary. In order for this to save, at a minimum, you have to give it a unique name. And if you do that, we can see it's saved in our chain. So that's the editor in a nutshell. I don't know, gentlemen, did I miss anything you want me to cover here?
No, that's
Can you quickly talk about, so you notice how it says modified? Can you talk about like what happens when you do edit an existing TTP and how we retain the original TTP?
Yep. So, right, good question. So everything that's imported from GitHub, so like your community, your professional TTPs, are saved and accessible, like whatever here, install payload request module. This is an unmodified copy of that TTP. And if we want to create our own change, maybe, I don't know, modifying the command or adding a variant or whatever, we can do that. And in doing so, a copy is created called modified. And if we search here, I think we should actually have a copy of both. Yeah. So this is the original, the one I initially brought up. And then this is the modified copy of that TTP. So you can go and just change stuff as you need to without worrying about like polluting the original data source, which is useful if you're just experimenting or testing.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's it for the editor. And if there are no questions, we can move on.
Yep. So the one thing I wanted to point out, because you had mentioned, was that like tags field and stuff, like you're seeing some fields in there that might not seem like you might not know where they're used at and things like that. Like the tags one is actually, you could probably use as well, like with the API changes and everything. If you wanted to filter all of your stuff coming back, right? Like you can actually filter, like you can write into there that like, hey, find all the destructive tags, something like that, for all the TTPs like that. So adding those into there, that's kind of like, if you want something that's like easy to like grep through and everything on your API requests that are coming back.
Yeah.
I'd recommend using that kind of stuff for those.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. And one of the important tags to note, and something viewers have probably seen before, is like the destructive tag. So if the TTP can be expected to corrupt the system or make breaking changes or whatever, you're probably familiar with this. And to Bart's point, tags are super important if you're doing anything programmatically where you just want to be able to filter your TTPs on something more fine-grained than ID and tactic. So maybe in the case of setting up a particular range where you want to use a TTP, maybe if it has like bespoke baked-in configuration or whatever, or if it's being run on a certain device or whatever, you can just tag it that way.
Yep. Okay. So I guess I'll go back into sharing screen. Move my Zoom video out of the way. Disappear. Multiple monitors. Yeah, so sorry, let me click share screen. This is Postman for kind of like dealing with the API stuff. I just wanted to kind of go through it just so like we can put into perspective like what it was what we just talked about and all that. Because as you can see, like when you just run on a separate TTP, you get all these back, right? So here you'd see like if you had your tags or whatever, it's just much easier. I think there was possibly when you used to run the old API, you would see all these extra fields and you'd be like, what the heck? Or like, where are all these extra fields coming from? That's part of the reason with the editor change as well. You're now getting to see all of that raw, and you just, everything's more cohesive from seeing two separate things of what you're seeing in the UI compared to what you used to see in the API. Now you see it in the API and you see it in the UI. But yeah, next up, I think we were going to talk about payloads, which is a fun one. I know there was some troubleshooting and everything going on yesterday with some of the payloads stuff. Payloads have been completely reworked in 1.5, right? So 1.4, they were strictly based off of the file name that was the payload name that was attached to the TTP. Now everything is swapped over to where the SHA hash is kind of the SHA-1 hash is the like main way of figuring out what TTP is what. So when you see it inside the editor, it might look kind of weird at first, but if you go to, let me pull up operator, right? And we upload, I'm just gonna upload a random. Okay, sorry, I thought that was, so yeah, so we will come over here, hit launch chain. Let's just create a new TTP, give it a name, test. And here, when you click this, this is now where you can, in the UI, where you're gonna upload payloads from. So like if you have something on your local box, you want to attach it to the actual TTP, you can come in here, click upload payload. I'll just go ahead and click that for now. And you can see here, right, like this here is the actual SHA-1 of the file. So it kind of works as a versioning as well. So if you make a change on your payload, you should know that like it's tracked differently because the SHA changes when the payload changes. So with that, not everybody's on Mac, but it might be worth seeing inside here, just kind of how this directory structure is laid out. This will stop doing that. But yeah, so right here when we uploaded today, what was it? Yeah. So this was the one that was just uploaded right now. You can see that it goes into your workspace directory, and underneath the server that you're logged into, the payloads, and then it will be your SHA-1 hash, and inside that folder is your payload. So that's just kind of like the workspace flow of that. If you're connected to a reader, sorry, I have to stop reading stuff when it comes in.
We'll answer the questions. You just keep focused on your demo.
But yeah, so is there? Oh, so this was the other thing that was in Discord that I remembered is people like wondering how the payload, like how does operator know where the payload's at, right? So it'll check the workspace local first, and if there is a folder there with that SHA-1 and the payload is in there, then it will use that one. And if not, then it should send the request out to Outpost, which will then pull that payload if it exists on Outpost. So if you go into your directory and you see, oh, all these payloads are not here, right? We used to, I believe in 1.4, you could view all the payloads and download them all, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and cache them. So like that's not there anymore, right? The way around that, like if you really want to cache all your payloads, then essentially you would want to probably use the API to interact with and do a get on all of the payload URLs that are coming back. I posted a Python script in the Discord the other day that kind of would go through and pull all the URLs for you so that you could go through and then curl them or whatever you wanted to do. And then they would all be placed inside these payloads directory. So from there, the API changes. The API changes were quite dramatic in 1.4 to 1.5 to the point where you probably wouldn't recognize how different they are. Like if you saw one, you'd think it's completely different because it's just more organized and it's more for public for us, like actually people interfacing with that API. Before it was mostly internal, the way that it was used, and there was only a few endpoints that were actually exposed for a developer or for people who are using the programmatic features of Operator. Did you want to answer a question? Or okay. But yeah, that's like the API has changed quite a bit, and it's now focused on getting users to be able to interact with it, and all the scripts, everything that you're using, easier way to do, which the API key itself, if you look, this was a welcomed change, at least this was something that used to kill me all the time, was every time you'd restart your Operator instance, you used to get a new API key, which if you were trying to interface with the API at all, you would pull your hair out probably, because the key would change all the time, and then you'd wonder why stuff was working and wasn't working. So the token is now generated upon when you launch the app. It will stay that until you either uninstall, remove it, or if you change it yourself. So, and the other thing about the token is it's not, if I remember correctly, it's not it doesn't have to be this long, right? Like you can actually use, like, you can generate your own API token to be like your human readable, whatever you want while you're developing, just to make it easier. Anybody want to put any input on API stuff, Alex, or?
Just can you show people where the API docs are and how they can look into it?
Can do. API docs, this new fresh docs section that we have, which should be much more useful, since it can kind of, it remembers its state compared to before. You used to, like, if you're viewing it and you'd go away, you'd then have to go back through, re-click everything. The actual Operator API endpoints are documented here with curl commands that will attempt to get you working. You'll still have to kind of, put in, like, here your token or whatever. So whatever your token is, insert that in the proper place. But from there, you should just be able to use these as like a template for when you're trying to access the API via the command line. So the other thing is this top level. Well, we call it, I say top level, but it's essentially it's broken up, right? Like these are all the things that you can do with chains. So you create a new chain identifier, delete a chain, schedule a chain, delay a chain, like all of that. You have all the stuff that you're going to do with your agents, which adding facts is now you can do via the API. It used to have some issues, I think, if I remember correctly, when I was building some TTPs before. So you should be able to like add your facts via the API much easier. And then querying the TTPs. People have been asking about importing TTPs and how you would like kind of mass import from other versions and everything like that. The easiest way now, or probably the most effective way, is to probably interact with the API and do it that way. If you have a ton that you want to import. Payloads, you can now list all the local payloads in Operator. So those would be the payloads that are in that workspace directory that we looked on earlier. And then you can also upload a payload via the command line as well. And that should, once again, make it easier to programmatically interact with it. So next up was the ranges and redirectors. I wasn't sure if Alex, you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll talk. I'm going to talk probably for a little while. So that's good. Unless you have anything. All right, cool. So I'll take over for a little bit. So
stop sharing.
All right. So I'm going to hit on a number of things. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about redirectors and the changes that have happened there. I'm going to be talking about our new methodology for plugins. I'm going to be talking also a little bit about what the infrastructure looks like on the back end and why we've made some of the changes we've made. And hopefully that can provide some context on like how data is getting loaded into Operator and how we think about where you should be storing your TTPs and how those TTPs get ingested into Operator for a team environment. So let's start with redirectors. So right now we've largely gone towards like manual deployment of redirectors. What we found is a lot of people either like didn't want to use AWS or GCP, or they had to use their own custom internal like VMware, ESXi, some kind of virtualization stack where they wanted to stand up their own redirectors. So we wanted to facilitate that primary use case. And that is now why you can just download the headless Linux and install it on a server wherever, and then insert your host and token, which will be spit out by the headless version of Operator when you start it on a remote server. Now, the biggest change in redirectors from what existed in 1.4 and 1.5 is in 1.5, what we've essentially done is turn the desktop application into a thin client that wraps around both the API and the underlying gRPC connections that like make all of the actions inside of Operator work. So with that being said, when you go into a redirector in 1.5 and you click connect, what's actually happening is the UI is now basically remotely connecting to that redirector. And you are now operating from Operator as though you are on that remote server. So now the way to think about it is you've essentially like Citrix thin cliented into that redirector, and you're now operating from it. And if you notice, as soon as I clicked connect, I now have different agents available inside of my redirector. So instead of Alex, which was my local system, I now have root because I'm running on that redirector as root with my headless Linux instance. You'll also note that I have an agent beaconed in over there. So what this lets us do is provide you the same experience for a local use case of Operator as a remote use case of Operator. And it removes a lot of the weird redirector management that you might have had to do in 1.4. So when you want to actually use 1.5's redirector, you would just come into settings and you'd note the settings look basically identical to the settings that would exist when you're local. So when I disconnect, let's disconnect real quick. So if I go over to connect, go here and I disconnect, you'll note my settings are basically this. By the way, this isn't the local server address. This is the callback address, and we're updating the UI to make that more clear. But you'll note these are my local configurations. And then when I actually go in and connect to this redirector, these are now the settings of that remote redirector. So you'll note the port changed, new token, the callback address is different. The listening ports are the same because I haven't changed them. And if you had custom encryption keys or anything like that, it would be denoted here. So you then can use these redirectors the exact same way that you would a local instance of Operator. One of the things to note is that if you are making changes on a redirector, they won't persist back down to your local Operator instance. But if you are working in your local Operator, let's say I want to build new TTPs. So I've disconnected from this redirector, and I want to build new TTPs or create new chains. Like I have a custom one here that we'll talk about today. So if I have a custom chain that I've built and I want to propagate it up to the redirector, I would build it locally. And then I would be able to connect to that redirector, and that would propagate the changes forward to that redirector. So I'd be able to use the chain from that system. And let's just double check. So you'll note that chain has now pushed forward to the redirector, and all of those TTPs and data are available on that system. So I will kind of pause there just for a second and show you how you would beacon in a new agent to a redirector. It's the same exact thing. So let's go ahead and grab this. As you can see, I'm running that agent. So if I want to connect an agent to that redirector, I just go into Numa And I just point it at that address, that callback address here, and then the type of port and protocol that I want to use. And then I'm able to connect in a new agent and it would become available. You'll note all of the configuration information. It's experience-wise all the exact same. So what we then can do is when we go and disconnect, you'll note all of those agents will go away. And we now have the agents that are connected to this local system. So the reason for this design is if you're as part of a team environment, your redirector becomes a team server. So for enterprise users, you can actually set up a redirector and then have all of your team members connect in, and you get access to stuff like team chat, encrypted team chat between all of the users on your redirector. You get to have all of your users can use the exact same agents. All of your users could then have the same synced TTPs getting pushed forward to the redirector as well. And you could like share, build things independently and then share them all forward to the same redirector. So that is Connect in a really quick nutshell. One of the changes we have made is that the infrastructure automation, anything that is going to be infrastructure oriented, we've moved that to our enterprise license, and we've kept the community and professional tiers at using like use cases for individuals. And we've moved infrastructure provisioning and a lot of the team enablement stuff to our enterprise tier. So moving forward, I'm going to talk about plugins. So plugins have also had a pretty significant change since 1.4, and there are a few reasons for this. So primary reason number one, plugins in 1.4 were HTML documents, which meant they could not be loaded into the headless version of Operator. So in terms of porting forward and looking down the line, that strategy just wasn't a sustainable modular way for us to build plugins that could be used the same in the desktop version of Operator as they could in the redirectors and headless version of Operator. So in that vein, we've also tried to simplify the way that these plugins are used. And we want them to basically be one-click install as much as is possible. So for listeners, if I want to install a new listener, I have two options here. I have HTTPS and I have Sliver. I'm going to install both. But if I want to enable HTTPS on my system, I can just click and install. And then when I go back, you'll note you have HTTPS 8443 is now available on your system, and you can send HTTPS beacons. So the reasoning for removing the configuration is that we're trying to completely eliminate complexity and make things as much as possible single-click functionality. For the art plugin, so the art plugin right now, we have a bug, and that bug is open on the board. And as I mentioned in the chat, we have a fix implemented already for 1.5.3, which is scheduled for release possibly tomorrow. The absolute latest release date for 1.5.3 will be Tuesday of next week. And that will have a series of fixes that you can go check the operator support board. If somebody could drop the operator support issue board link into both Discord and YouTube chat, I'd appreciate it. You can see all of the issues that are open and also all of the issues that will be patched in 1.5.3. In 1.5.3, the art plugin will also be single-click install, and it will automatically import all of the art TTPs. And it will also import all of the art facts into the fact engine and make those facts globally available to all agents. All right. So let's take a look at Sliver. So one of the things that we are doing with 1.5 and beyond is we're trying to turn Operator into, think of it as like an interface for agents. So we want you to be able to deploy out any type of implant, whether it's a Sliver Meterpreter implant, Cobalt Strike Beacon, one of our custom agents, and you should be able to send an execute assembly TTP or a BOF TTP to all of those agents from Operator, and all of those agents would be able to just understand how to execute those TTPs. So that's kind of our vision, is like you can have a single TTP definition that would work for every single agent, and you wouldn't have to write custom versions of those TTPs for those agents. So let's take a look at Sliver. So the Sliver implant actually does have one manual step, and this is in the documentation. So when I click on Sliver, that will actually install the plugin, but you have to also add in your Sliver certificates for MTLS. So if I go to downloads, let me do this off screen. If I go to downloads, I have my Sliver certificates that are generated when I start the Sliver server. I can copy these, and then I am able to go to my Workspace. And you'll see the Sliver plugin. Again, if you want to pull the source code, you can just go here and take a look. It's also on GitHub, so if you don't want to. And then I have my certificate directory, and I can just paste them in. So once those are pasted in, I just refresh, and I will now have Sliver MTLS listener available inside of Operator. And what that lets us do, so let's see if it got deleted by Defender. It did, unfortunately. Downside of using a heavily signatured agent. Let me go grab that. Paste. So I can just start a Sliver agent, and it will just connect into Operator like any other agent at this point. And what that lets you do is you can send standard TTPs like let's see, current user. I wouldn't have a current domain user. Enumerate current user. So you'd be able to send standard TTPs. It may or may not work. This is a payload dependent one, but the idea is that you would be able to use the same kind of TTPs, and you would also be able to send and leverage some of the more advanced executors that exist inside of Sliver agents. So if you wanted to use beacon object files, for example, you'd be able to send BOFs. If you wanted to do execute assembly, you would be able to create TTPs that have executors that are execute assembly, and you can deploy those TTPs against the Sliver agents. And you'd still be able to use the fact engine where you have the fact dependencies. And as with any other agent, you can just do add in your own custom facts. So we do file.path, see users. And then the TTPs will get passed through the planning engine the same exact way. And we can still parse IOCs out of the TTPs. So that's what we're going to be building towards as we move forward. Just a comprehensive, cohesive experience with plugins that will let you add in implants from other frameworks without having to do a lot of complicated stuff. We're trying to eat that complexity. So that is the plugin system and the changes we've made. Now I'll talk a little bit about infrastructure and the way that Operator works. We're going to be having an architecture diagram come out that's going to explain the way that we do things. But there's two critical pieces that I want to talk about, and that is the repository structure. So we have community. And if you go to community, community is obviously our open source repository. This is where you can grab all of our TTPs, payloads, plugins that are available to the community. We also have so if we want to go look at what's available in the professional license, what you'll note is it's the exact same structure. This repository is functionally identical to what exists in the community. And this is the content that you would get with a professional license. So it's the same kind of thing for the enterprise tier. If you were an enterprise tier user, you would get access to the enterprise repository when you add an enterprise license. Now, the reason I bring this up is all of these repositories are hosted by something called Outpost. An Outpost is a simple server that provides all of that community, professional, or enterprise data into headquarters, which is portal.prelude.org. And that is what gets served down into your operator instance. So if you want to host your own data, let's say I want to have my own TTPs, I want to have my own payloads, I want to have my own training programs, I want to have my own documentation, and I want it to all be natively available inside of Operator for people in my enterprise. That's where Outpost comes into play. You can create your own repository by cloning community, standing up your own outpost and attaching it to headquarters for your organization. And then all of that data that you're custom building is version controlled in Git and then immediately available to everybody inside of your organization. So that's the reasoning that we're moving like the infrastructure components to the enterprise, is we're trying to push people towards hosting things in Git and like not handling a lot of the manual editing and version controlling inside of Operator, but doing that inside of the Outpost and using GitHub or GitLab or whatever version controlling software you would naturally have inside your organization. So that pretty much covers everything from my side. Bart, did I miss anything that you wanted me to cover?
Not so much the ranges redirector. Did you happen to be able to touch on like how we essentially redirectors are now ranges?
I didn't talk specifically about that. So we removed the concept of the range field. So ranges was kind of like this weird, obscure metadata that existed on agents, and agents would beacon into a range. And what we found is like having one-off fields that do weird things tends not to scale well. So what we've transitioned to is, instead of using a range, like the range field to coordinate your agents, you can now just stand up a redirector and say, let's say these are the agents I want to use to test the people that exist inside the finance department of my organization. And all of those agents are going to point to this one redirector. That is now your range. And you can just deploy all of your TTPs against all of the agents in that range, that redirector, as opposed to sending it against a range field. Does that answer the question? Cool.
Yep. Okay. So the final 9 minutes or so is going to be just ensuring that we answer all the rest of the questions. While we're waiting for them and all of that, we can, I kind of wanted to do some like tips / like things that we found that might help people that are just either starting to use Operator or have used 1.4 and then move to 1.5. I guess I'll start off with that, and then we can kind of just go around the room. And yeah, so like my number one thing would be 1.5 is different, but I promise you, because we used it internally before this, once you start using 1.5, and you will see how much more powerful 1.5 is over 1.4, like to the point where I would be doing stuff on 1.5 and I would not want to go back to 1.4 because there was stuff I could do on 1.5 that I could not do on 1.4 before. A lot of that is the API changes. A lot of that is even the ranges redirector thing. Like, it simplifies a lot of things. So if you are like, this is different and everything, it is different, but it is I promise it is more powerful. And there's a lot of reasoning for the things that went into it.
We had one question, which is pivoting proxying support in NUMA. So I will talk to two things. One, NUMA itself. We're probably not going to be making many, if any, updates to NUMA. We are going, that agent is basically completely signatured. So we're going to be focusing on new agents, and we already have one new agent that has been built. We just have to go and do some more code edits to it and make sure that it's at the level that we're happy with, that we can release it. Now, pivoting proxying. So we actually, because the Sliver team is awesome, from their side, they have stood up a plugin on Sliver itself. So if you log into your Sliver client, there's a Prelude-Operator Connect that you can run, and that will actually let you use the entire Sliver framework with all of the proxying and pivoting support without having to use our NUMA agents. So you could stand up a Sliver C2 server, stand up a Sliver client, and then build out a series of Sliver agents. And you can task them all directly from Operator, and you can use their pivoting and proxying support. Moving forwards, we absolutely will have pivoting and proxying support in future agents. That's one of the actual line items on the design guidelines I gave to the 2 people on this call who are working on it. So hopefully that answers your question.
Tips? Anyone else?
There was one item I realized I didn't address, which is the vector plugin. So we pulled the vector plugin, as I had mentioned, because it wasn't one click. There's no way for us to do configuration. Also, we are, if you noticed in Outpost, we're pushing our publishers to the enterprise tier as like that's an enterprise functionality. So we're going to be pushing the vector. There's going to be 2 vector plugins. There's going to be a vector plugin for the Outpost itself, which will let you automatically publish data as data is being sent from your from all the users in your enterprise to your Outpost. So that data will go from your Outpost to any number of SIMs that you've created a adapter for. So we will support Splunk, Elastic, CrowdStrike, Falcon, and DynamoDB and Vector through the Outpost. You'll be able to toggle those on, and it will shove data directly to your whatever your SIM is. And you'll be able to make edits from Connect in version 1.6. You'll be able to modify and tweak your Outpost while you're working from inside of Operator. We're also, because we realize there is a lot of people that depend on Vector, we're actually going to be upgrading and patching Vector for our professional license members, and we'll do a one-off support for that particular plugin for people who have a professional license.
So one of my tips would be to, on your agent, you have a profile on each individual agent. Highly recommend going through that, taking a look. I will continue to preach facts until everyone knows what they are. It's such an amazing thing within our tool, and if you're not using facts in your TTPs, now is the time to do it. It's so great, and like now we do from both the agent itself and global. If you don't know how the facts and stuff work, definitely go into our docs section. You can pull up facts within there, take a look. It will make you such a power user from the beginning. So that would be my tip of the day.
It's so the because you brought that up, kind of want to go into in the last like 3 minutes that we have is the next webinars in the kind of, because like I said, we're trying to, this is more to just get people all on the same baseline of 1.5 and how to expect things. The next webinars will actually go into using 1.5 to build like a chain from scratch, how to use facts as they were intended. Like you brought up, I don't even think I can write TTPs now without using facts, at least for just like even conditional logic things like that. So it would be cool to kind of work with the community on this one and kind of like see like what some potential, like, I mean, nothing too crazy for chains, but like ideas that people would have to do. And we can try to build that in front of people. So that way that they see our workflow, they see how we use it, and just the little things that like make Operator different in a good way, right? Like there's a lot of things that people are used to just coming in with like random frameworks and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of thought and process that went into Operator, and the choices and the designs are there for a reason. So That's just kind of what you can expect for the next webinars that are coming up. It'll be more like technical, hands-on, and trying to build things.
Building a chain on stream would be fun. So,
yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense. So maybe what we'll do is we'll collect feedback on areas, or we'll collect feedback on areas where people are struggling, and then we can do webinars around that. But we'll also do webinars like you were mentioning around building of chains and how we think about processing intelligence, designing chains, building those chains, and releasing them out to customers.
Yep. Final calls for questions.
So everything that we've done here is also going to be recorded, and so it will be on YouTube when we are done streaming.
Final words from us, or from the team. Okie dokie.
Good.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and said we look forward to building like the community up and trying to answer the questions and also, you know, provide some training and all of that. So thanks.
See you guys.
See you.